Oliveiro, thank you very much for joining us. Can you give us an overview of your activities in the Middle East region?
Sure. First off, thanks for having me on your channel, Gareth. Tell you a little bit about Osram. Osram is made up of two different elements, osmium and wolfram. Wolfram is the German name for tungsten. Those are the filaments that were used in the bulbs, the general purpose bulbs that were manufactured back in 1906 when the brand was first conceived. So we're just over 110 years old. We're headquartered in Munich, in Germany. We've got about 27,000 employees, and last year's revenue was about 4.1 billion euros. We were born out of being a Siemens company. So right up to 2013, we were part of Siemens, and that's when we spun off, and we got listed on the German stock exchange as a public company, which is why we place a lot of emphasis on good business conduct and strong ethics. We're made up of three business units. Opto Semiconductor generates about 32% of our overall revenue. They focus on semiconductors, both in the visible lighting spectrum and as non-visible sensors. The visible lighting spectrum is what we see as LED chips. The automotive business generates about 45% of our business. They are the market leader and the pioneers of using LED technology for vehicular headlight and tail light systems. Today, what they're releasing, which is already out on the roads, are the new headlamps based on laser technology. Now, these power up to 600 meters when you flick the high beams. That's being rolled out in the new BMW i8 and the new 7 Series from this year onwards. Okay. Finally, the digital business. It brings in about 23% of the overall revenue. A significant share of the Middle East revenue plays a contribution into this portfolio, and I'm a part of that business.
And of course, digital business, that's what we're kind of here, we're going to talk about around like Middle East. Sure. From the digital side of things, in terms of technology developments, because obviously a lot of R&D has been happening in the background at Osram. Let's talk a little bit about that.
In the last year, if I'm allowed to tell you three stories, we've been making some progress in smart lighting. One of these areas is a project called Dexal. So what happened here is we work quite closely with the OEMs. We understand what kind of technology they require, the drivers, the control systems, the sensors. Usually, most of the manufacturers expect us to miniaturize their drivers, but they want us to be capable of interfacing with more third-party systems, making it more flexible and not just restricted to Osram. So we thought, how can we encompass all of these points, put it together into a new driver portfolio, and make it accessible to the market? That's where Dexal came in. So Dexal is an intraluminaire interface, which is based on the DALI 2 standard, the new standard. Yeah. This offers bidirectional feedback and communication between the control system, the driver, as well as the sensor. This allows managers to start monitoring the energy and power consumption, number of hours burnt, temperature profiles, and run diagnostics on the system. It's quite a flexible system. It needs to be implemented by a lot of the OEMs. Where we see it actually contributing significantly is the street lighting business across this region, because Dexal will also have a lot of exterior luminaires capability.
So do you see this is all kind of forms under the sort of digital part of the business at Osram? Do you foresee sort of future growth and revenue growth coming in under the digital arm?
Absolutely. I think that's where we need to go. It is progressive. We're starting to use less analog systems. The digital framework also gave rise to us investing a lot more into a virtual sort of a system. So that's where we came up with a new program called Lightelligence. It is a tailor-made software, which is cloud-based. It is an open IoT platform, and it allows us to interface with either Osram sensors or with third-party sensors, but to harvest a lot of data and analytics for the end customer. And these could be from space optimization perspective, presence detection, which is then used for proper energy monitoring, as well as with little sensors from a family that we call Ironstone. You can even use it for indoor location services or asset tracking.
In terms of verticals, actually we mentioned before that we spoke about a third sort of area of Osram, and that was in vertical farming or horticulture using LED from Osram. Quite an interesting topic, especially in this region. UAE, of course, is looking at and going into that area in vertical farming and horticulture and using LED lighting. Tell us about that and what Osram is contributing to that.
Of course. In my pastime, I'm a foodie and I experiment with food and I understand the food industry to a certain level. 2 years ago, Osram invested in a company that they were partnered with on the technology, and it's called Fluence. Fluence builds bespoke horticultural LED systems used for vertical farming. I think there's a huge potential and opportunity for the usage of these systems within the Middle East. Primarily because what I understand from the yield that is currently harvested in the general farms, a lot of it is scorched. And that's because of the climate. You've got harsh sun, exposure to heat. We have, in some cases, irrigation issues, but we also have dust and sand. So this can always spoil or waste a lot of the produce. Yeah. The concept of using the vertical farming is on a controlled environment. We use a circadian rhythm. We use LEDs that are focused on fixed wavelengths meant for plant harvesting. And this is quite scientific. So we employ horticulturalists and botanists within the company to help the client realize how they can achieve their goals. I see a huge potential over here. I'm quite pleased to hear that Emirates Airlines recently invested in a system like this. They're the early adopter. But I see that there's going to be a lot more investors into the space.
Yeah, from horticulture and of course some other projects that Osram is working on now, retail, hospitality, F&B, and high-end residential as well. But in terms of projects that you're actually ongoing or that you've just completed, some of the big ones that you worked on, what are they?
Sure, we're currently working on 2 hotels for the Arenco group. That's going to be the Hilton and the Marriott. A few years ago, we completed the internal and external lighting at the Rixus, which is on the JBR. In terms of shopping malls, we recently completed retrofit at Dubai Mall. That was quite a significant endeavor for us because we're talking about a shift from the traditional lighting that was installed just over 10 years ago to new technologies. So there's a reduction of energy consumption from, let's say, 35 watts per meter to under 20 watts per meter, but still maintaining the same light levels. And the efficiency that we have over there, besides being very high, it's the longevity of the system. Because what we've been noticing is that in the after hours, a lot of the lighting still gets used because while they have maintenance crews working around the clock to try and fix areas that need fixing, they need lighting for that. So you're looking at about 20 out of 24 hours of usage of the same lighting system, and we're providing all the warranties and the guarantees for this kind of longevity.
You also have a couple of projects around the Expo 2020. Of course, this mega event is due to take place just over a year. By the time Middle East opens, it will be just a year exactly. What have you got going on? And I guess in the overall topic of Expo 2020, do you think that's going to have a sort of significant impact on the lighting fixtures market overall?
So we've got quite a significant responsibility on 3 of the large pavilions over there. So we've got the mobility, we've got the COEX and the sustainability pavilions. We have a lot of lighting in there. We have lighting fixtures, which is just delivering monochromatic white light, but we have dynamic lighting systems, which are almost using a media facade type of element, a lot of color changing, controlled lighting. Yes, I do think that the Expo is a fantastic event to promote technology. And I think there's going to be more of a drive of new interfaces, new ideas that's going to be spread through the event. I mean, after all, it's meant to be harvesting a lot of technical know-how and new innovation.
When it comes to lighting in general, where do you see the future, and in particular with smart lighting, because that is a sort of key element of Osram as well, of IoT and digital in the digital space. How much different is it going to look in, say, 5 or 10 years from what lighting is now as we see it?
Sure. So we've got 2 different elements. It's a miniaturization of luminaires, as well as the technology that goes inside. So the LED chips are getting smaller. We're in positions to better control the heat management and simultaneously also provide greater efficiency. Mm-hmm. Where we're going towards is what we call the digital ceiling at Osram. So it's the ability for us to provide power to illuminate ceilings whilst also harvesting a lot of data from it. There is an ability to install sensors within the light fixtures. Very small sensors. These could be used for presence detection, for occupancy and space utilization, wayfinding if required by just using your app to get around different locations, but push marketing as well. So retailers can use the same sensors to leverage information and send that out as a push marketing message to a particular retailer.
We're all here, of course, in the build-up to Light Middle East. It's not far away. What do you have plans for the show in terms of what you're showcasing? And secondly, obviously lighting designers is a key sort of partner that you'd like to meet, but then there's also consultants, contractors, and of course the end users themselves, the actual project owners. I'm sure you'd like to meet a few of them at the show as well.
Of course, we're looking forward to welcoming the crowd. We typically get to meet a lot of the design community. So that's lighting designers, that's engineers of different sorts, educating them about our new endeavors within Osram. A lot of this is catered towards the project market. So we're talking about commercial systems. We have a lot of niche systems that we will be talking about. We won't be showing so much of product, but more about experiences and talking about how they can achieve their goals. We would like to meet a lot of developers, understand where they're going with it. Of particular interest to us, there's a lot of potential that's coming up in the next few years in Saudi. We'd like to hear more about developers from the Saudi region and what their challenges are and how they'd like to achieve them.
Oliveiro, thank you very much for your time, and we'll see you in Light Middle East 2019.
Thanks, Gareth. Thanks for having us.